recording. All right, let's party like it's DPP. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Welcome to Daily Power Parsha. Today is Monday, August 16, 2021, in case you're wondering. But either way, whatever date it is, we're starting to explore the Torah portion of Ki Teitzei. And just to check in, I gave everybody here in person 2 pieces of paper for the first and second readings. Paper 1 is for reading 1, paper 2 is for reading 2. Do you guys have that? Yes? Okay. And I also have to apologize for those of you that are here in person. The AC conked out this morning. By the way, it was worse before we made some adjustments. Anyway. Because usually it's freezing. I know. Can't get this place right. Okay, so here we go. We're going to jump into a new Torah portion. Today is Monday, which means that it's really the second reading for today. But we didn't do yesterday because we don't do Sundays. So we have this double header. And also, as always, everyone is invited, if you're around, if you're in town, and you're available, to join us Mondays for the in-person version, which we've called Peachy Parsha, lunch from Spicy Peach. Okay, that's a bit of a scheduling and public service announcement. Let's jump in. We're studying the 21st chapter of Deuteronomy. This is verse number 10. Ki Teitzei lamilchama. If you go out to war. Oh, wait, I'm so sorry. I don't have it up on my screen. Sorry, folks. I'm going to rectify that right now. Here we go. Okay, sharing the screen. Ta-da! Can you guys see that? Ki Teitzei?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. Reading number 1. Here we have a discussion about war and about the Eshet Yifat Toar, the captive, the woman who's taken captive, and the soldier wants to marry her, etc. You'll see the laws in a moment. A lot of spiritual meaning behind these laws as well. But let's go into it. All right, verse number 10. If you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God will deliver him into your hands, and you take his captives. And you see, verse 11, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire her, you may take her for yourself as a wife. So let's just, before we get further, let's just break this down. So the context here is war. And the Torah says, if you go out to war, this is not an obligatory war. This is a war that, we don't want wars to happen. No one wants war. That's crazy what's going on now in the world with Afghanistan.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, so no one wants war. No one wants conflict. If you go out to war against your enemies, which also has a layer of spiritual meaning. Because in the Hebrew, it's not against your enemies. If you look in the Hebrew side, it's al oivecha, which means above or on top of your enemies. Al means above, on top of. So the deeper meaning here is that when you go out to war, you should have the confidence that you will be victorious. You should be confident that you will prevail, and the confidence itself will help with the success of the mission. So when you go out to war against your enemies, you need to know that you're not just against your enemy, but you're alevecha, you're on top of your enemy. You got this. It's in the bag. What do they have? So in modern terminology, let's connect this to the way the modernists would speak. It's that when you're facing challenge, you need to envision success, right? Picture your success. Picture your achievement, and then it will materialize. So here, the first thing we need to do is imagine we're already on top, even before we start, that we're already on top of our enemies. Then, indeed, that is what will happen. Hashem will deliver the enemy into our hands. But here's a scenario. What happens if this happens? And then you take captives, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you say, oh, I would like to be with her. So the Torah says, you may take her for yourself as a wife, right? No such thing as just taking a captive and doing whatever you want. Again, you with me on this? These are the ethics, Jewish ethics of war. Because I probably don't need to tell you that in wars for all of history, the way it's worked is the victors do whatever they want, take whomever they want, and do with whomever they take whatever they want, without getting into detail. The Torah says, if you see amongst the captives a beautiful woman and you desire her, okay, are you ready to marry her as a wife? Right? Not just as a captive, as a wife. Here we go. So here's the process. And if the answer is yes, okay, not so simple. Here's the process. Verse number 12. You should bring her into your home, and she shall shave her head and let her nails grow. And that means see her not all dressed up perhaps, but see her in a more, I would say natural state, but I mean, her hair is shaved, so that's not necessarily a natural state, but in a less beautified, unadorned, thank you, that's a very good word, in a more unadorned or in an unadorned state. In other words, do you still really care about her to marry her, in an unadorned state? Okay, that's really what this is. So it's, right, she should be in an unadorned state. And then we'll see if you still really want to marry her, if it was just a momentary desire. And let's continue, verse 13. And she shall remove the garment of her captivity from upon herself, and stay in your house, and let her weep for a father and for a mother for a full month. In other words, nothing happens for a month. Again, how different is this than the way things work in the world, where pretty much no rules govern? Maybe there are rules, I don't know, international rules of war, but it's not followed, to my understanding. I mean, go in and you're victorious, and that's it. I mean, right now, was it in Afghanistan even that they were taking the young girls out from their homes? I mean, is that did I hear that correct?
Whenever when they went to one of the cities, they made a list of women between the ages of 15 and 45 to be married off to Taliban fighters.
There you go. Okay, so they're getting lists of women. This is happening till this day, and the Torah says there's no such thing. You're desiring a particular woman, okay, no problem. Are you ready to commit to her? Right? And how do you know? She's going to stay with you for a month. Nothing happens for a month. She's in an unadorned state, mourning her father and her mother, mourning, the life that she's lost. And then after that, the Torah says, if you still want to marry her, you may be intimate with her and possess her. Possessor means not, okay, that's a bad translation. Possessor, okay? And she will be a wife for you. That just means take her for a wife. Possess, again, I say a bad choice of translation. But essentially, the Torah is going the other way. You don't own her. She's not yours to do whatever you want with, because if that were the case, right? No, we won. So this is a captive. I could do with her whatever I want. No, that's actually literally what the Torah is saying is not the case. The only thing you're allowed to do, if you choose, is to marry her. And if you marry her, you have to know the person that you're marrying. There has to be at least a 30-day waiting period. Next. No, but the understanding here is that she would, come over to the Jewish faith. Again, I've mentioned this many times. It's a very important thing to remember when it comes to conversion, that conversion today is like a very complicated thing, but it's not really at its core a complicated thing. So to explain, it's just conversion. Moses' wife wasn't Jewish. I mean, originally wasn't born Jewish. Conversion means, yes, I'm on board. That's it. The question is, how do you know you're on board? How does the Bezdin know that how does the court know that you're on board if they're, stamping it? And how does a person know that they really want to be on board if they haven't yet learned about it or practiced it? That's why it takes time. Just about the sincerity of it. The implication here is that there has to be a sincere situation on both sides, but there's the rule is not, it's really not speaking to her, it's speaking to him. It's saying you can't just do whatever you want. It's not property. It's not like, sure, you won whatever you want. It's not how it works.
It's not like the goal.
Exactly. Oh, we won. Yeah, I get to do whatever. No. You like her? Commit to her. Not just whatever you want. It's especially, look, I would say that this is something that has been a struggle for all time, right? Within the struggle, okay, again, without getting too, detailed and too, stuck into this idea, but historically, there's been a struggle for women to be respected for who they are, as opposed to seen as objects, etc. Right? Let's just leave it at that. It's a challenge to this very day, right? It's a challenge in relationships, a challenge in communities, a challenge in various industries, right? Of course, we know about the Me Too movement that happened in Hollywood and other industries, and it's a challenge in gaming, in the gaming world. There's a lot of challenges with that, with women being respected, et cetera, and not just seen, in a certain way. And the point here is, it's not even giving this idea in a general context. It's in a context where there's even more of a chance for a woman to be marginalized and to be seen as an object and not as a human being. And the Torah says, even in this, I'm going to call it more extreme example, where there's a war and there's a captive of war, you still have to see her as a human being, right? That's anyway, I hope what I'm saying makes sense. I don't want to belabor the point. Okay. The Torah then continues to talk about the laws of, in this context, the law of divorce. And it's interesting because, any system that has rules of marriage also has, well, I can't say every system. Okay, but in Judaism, there are laws of marriage and laws of divorce. Kiddushin is marriage, Gittin is laws of divorce. It's interesting that the laws of divorce are in this context of this type of marriage. The commentators explain that the Torah is alluding to the fact that, when you don't go into it, maybe for the 100% the right reasons, because you caught your eye and you got excited and then you went through the process, but whatever, maybe that relationship won't last. Not saying for sure, but there's a possibility that that's not going to be a long-term thing when it's not predicated on the right core values, when it didn't start from the inside out, but from the outside in. We've talked about this many times. 4 layers of human compatibility in relationships correspond to the 4 worlds of Kabbalah. There's from the top down, there's Atzilut, Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya. This corresponds roughly to the dimensions within the human being of spiritual, intellectual, emotional, and physical. And there are 4 levels of relationship compatibility. There can be physical compatibility, emotional compatibility, intellectual compatibility, and spiritual compatibility. And the deeper the connection, the deeper the level of connection is, the more likely the relationship will be to last. So if the relationship is only predicated on the lowest rung of the ladder, so to speak, the physical, well, that's the most changing element of any person and any relationship, because no one looks the same at 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, 75. Literally, human beings don't look the same. So to base a relationship on the physical is to put it on a shifting foundation. It's like building an edifice on a foundation that is literally, by definition, moving. It's a moving foundation. So that's not a great way to build a building. You don't build a building on quicksand. Doesn't make sense. Emotional is a little bit more stable, but also very volatile. We feel differently as we go through life. We like things and we stop liking things, and that changes. Intellectual, a little bit more solid, a little bit more stable. The spiritual, the soulful connection is, of course, the most stable. Now, there's no guarantees in life, right? Somebody was a spiritual way one, and then obviously there's core values that could change. But typically core values, spiritual values, are typically the way they are. Even if they're manifest in slightly different ways, they typically remain consistent. So basing a relationship on core values is always the best way to proceed. The point here is this relationship 100% was not based on core values. This was a soldier who saw a captive And it says, I mean, look, the Torah tells us the case. If you see among the captives a beautiful woman and you desire her, there you go. You saw her, she was beautiful, and now you wanted her, which means that there's a physical attraction there. Okay. So in this context, the Torah says, FYI, here are the laws of divorce, because not that it's going to necessarily end in divorce, but when you think about relationships and marriages, one that's based on a spiritual connection and other things, or one that's based on a physical compatibility connection, the more volatile, the less stable, the more likely it will hit some challenges that might not be surmountable. Okay, does that make sense? Am I belaboring the point? Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. Verse 14. And it will be, if you do not desire her, so you married her, and now you no longer want to be married to her, then you shall send her away wherever she wishes. In other words, divorce. But you shall not sell her for money. Okay, now the reason why it says do not sell her for money, which sounds very odd about one's wife, is because the origin story is that she was a captive. So the point is, you cannot say, oh, well, I married a captive, so she's a POW, so let's just sell her as a slave. No. It's your wife. You want to divorce her? Okay, we can talk about that, but you can't just, You shall not keep her as a servant because you have afflicted her. In other words, you cannot mess around in this situation. You married her, now you don't want to be married to her. She deserves that dignity. Okay, next. So that's the laws of divorce. Yeah, sure. Right. Yeah. So where was the marriage? In New York? Okay, so we could talk more about that. Yeah, it's not a complicated process, but yeah, if there's the way it works in Jewish law is if you got in with the Jewish law, then it should also be undone Jewishly as well. So if it's just civil, then civil, but if it's not that Jewish element, then yeah, we could talk more about that. Oh yeah, interesting. Maybe Jewish summer cinema coming soon to a
Theater near us.
to a theater near you. I'm looking out at the theater right now. Okay, so here we go. Now verse 15 gets into other scenarios, and they're all predicated on marrying for the wrong reasons. I hate to say that, but the whole story begins with a captive and a guy finding her attractive, which again is not the best. I mean, look, could that relationship work? Sure. I mean, hopefully, we're all pulling for them to work out. But if there's any relationship that has a potential not to work out, it's one that's based on a more shallow connection than a deeper connection. The goal is deeper connections and less shallow connections. So here's the next scenario, verse 15. If a man has two wives, now we get into another scenario. Two wives, one beloved and the other despised. Now you're thinking, well, who has two wives? What kind of business is that?
Rachel and Leah.
Well, okay, Rachel and Leah, sure, Jacob. But biblically, polygamy is not prohibited for the man. It's not prohibited for a husband to have more than one wife. Okay, we don't do it, but because rabbinically it's banned, so it's not a Jewish thing to do. But biblically, it's theoretically okay. It was never in mainstream. Rabbinically, as I said, over the last many years, over 1,000 years, it's not been a Jewish thing. But it's theoretically, biblically a possibility. And again, this is really more of a scenario of understanding scenarios. So let's say a man has two wives, one beloved and the other despised. So he loves one and the other one, not so much. And listen to this. And they bear him sons, the beloved one and the despised one. And the firstborn son is from the despised one. So he has two wives. One he loves, one not so much. Each one has a child, a son. And the firstborn son is from the wife that he's not so into. Take a look at verse 16. Then it will be, On the day the husband bequeaths his property to his sons, he will not be able to give the son of the beloved wife birthright precedence over the son of the despised wife, the real firstborn son. In other words, you cannot skip the actual firstborn. You cannot say, well, I love this mom, this wife, and her son more than the other one. No, you can't play favorites. The reality is the firstborn is the firstborn, and that's it. So again, he will not be able to give the son of the beloved wife birthright precedence over the son of the despised wife, the real firstborn son. Rather, verse 17, and we're now on the second side of page 1. Rather, he must acknowledge the firstborn, the son of the despised wife, and give him, the firstborn, a double share in all that he possesses. So the rule is, with inheritance, is that the firstborn son gets a double portion over all of the other sons. That's the rule. Nassim, who's my oldest son, if you're listening, time to get excited. Anyway, no. All right. So the firstborn gets a double share. And in this case, even though he loves one wife and not so much the other wife, and maybe the kid also of the beloved wife he loves more than the other kid, it doesn't matter. The firstborn son gets the double share. Because this firstborn son, the Torah says, is the first of his strength, and he has the birthright entitlement. In other words, the firstborn is the firstborn. It's objective. Don't play favorites. Okay. Next, the Torah continues with more scenarios. And by the way, all of this is a product. All of this is, as the commentators explain, a continuum of falling in love, not necessarily for the right reasons, right? You didn't know her. You didn't know her, right? You had nothing in common, but she was attractive. And then you're like, okay, we're going to make it work. But you know what? It might not work. And then what happens if you stay with her, but you don't really like her? So you take another wife who you love. And then, but she had the first kid, and then she had the second kid. So you have to give her kid the firstborn inheritance. And then it leads to the next scenario, verse 18. Again, the commentators see this as a continuum. If a man has a wayward and rebellious son who does not obey his father or his mother, and they chasten, not sure. They they try to correct his behavior. They rebuke him, and he still does not listen to them. So here we go, verse 19. His father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of the city, to the gates of his place, and to the gate of his place. And they shall say to the elders of his city, this son of ours is wayward and rebellious. He does not obey us. He is a glutton and a guzzler. He is a glutton and a guzzler. Look at that. What's a glutton and what's a guzzler? A glutton is, what would you say? What's a glutton?
Eats a lot.
Right? What's a guzzler? Right.
Drinks a lot.
So Jewish law derives from this something very specific, that he has to eat and like indulge in certain things, and he has to drink certain things. The Talmud, in discussing the scenario, explains that it's such a specific scenario about how old this young man is, the rebellious son, what he has to eat, what he has to drink, what forms of rebellion he has to take, that the odds of this ever happening are basically zero. The Torah is giving us the concept. What happens, verse 21, let's get to what's the bottom line, what happens to this theoretical child? And all the men of his city shall pelt him to death with stones, and he shall die. So
Goodness.
Capital punishment for the rebellious son. So shall you clear out. I would hope that no parent ever said to their child, threatening them with the rebellious son, so shall you clear out the evil from among you, and all Israel will listen in fear. Okay, again, this never happened, and it will never happen. The rules and regs for this to happen, or the scenario, the precise scenarios that needs to take place for this to happen, are basically zero. I'm going to share with you some Rashi. So if you're online, you can see it up here. If you're not online, you have to take my word for it. So the Rashi says, take a look. They will chasten him. The parents must warn him in the presence of three people. Oh, look at this. And what's the warning? Three things: not to steal, not to eat a certain quantity of meat, and not to drink a certain quantity of wine. And then they must have him flogged by the court. The Talmud amends this to read, they must warn him in the presence of two witnesses and have him flogged in the presence of three judges. The wayward and rebellious son incurs punishment only, listen to this, the wayward and rebellious son incurs punishment only if he steals money from his father, consumes at one meal a tartamar, a weight equal to half a manna of meat, and drinks at the same meal half a log of wine, as it is said, referring to him a glutton and a guzzler. And elsewhere it says, do not be among wine guzzlers, among gluttonous eaters of meat, etc., which indicates that the term guzzler refers to wine and glutton refers to meat. Oh, that's how we know that glutton and guzzler refers to specifically meat and wine, because there are other verses in Torah, because glutton could just be food in general. Guzzler could be drinking in general. How do we know it means meat and wine specifically? Because there are other verses that make that comparison.
Ari,
Yeah.
I have a note.
Yeah.
This is from Sanhedrin.
First of all, hi, Mark.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, good.
About the glutton part.
Yeah.
It said the weight, in other words, he eats the weight of 50 gold dinars, which is approximately 8 ounces. But the wayward son must eat this quantity in a single mouthful.
Oh,
That's,
yeah. 8 ounces.
in one mouthful.
That's why it's when it's never can't happen.
Yeah.
It's a theoretical scenario to bring out, like, what's it bring out? That's a question in of itself. It's bringing out like a theoretical scenario, but it's not 8. How big is 8 ounces?
Half a pound.
So what would that look like with meat? Is that a steak? Is a steak usually 8 ounces?
Smaller.
But in one mouthful.
Yeah.
8 ounces. 8 ounces, 200 grams. But I don't know how much.
Well, they have those hot dog eating contests at Coney Island where they just.
Oh, Kobayashi. Yeah. Yeah, Donna mentioned the hot dog eating contest in Coney Island. Right. Those are great. Those guys, kol hakavod. Man.
Oh, they do like a half pound burger.
Oh, a half pound, but in one bite. Mark, you said in one bite, right?
Yeah, one mouthful.
Okay, that's very ambitious. What about the wine? How much wine is it? Do you have a note on that?
Yeah, that's another one from Sanhedrin.
Yeah.
His opinions regarding the modern equivalent range between 12 and 21 fluid ounces. The wayward son must drink this quantity in a single draught.
What does
Does that
draft mean?
I don't know.
Not in one gulp.
I think it's a gulp. What's a drought? I don't, D-R-A-U-G-H-T.
Oh, D-R-A-U-G-H-T. What does that mean? D-R-A-U-G-H-T.
You just hold it and keep on.
Oh, yeah. What if it's a continuous pour? Like guzzle. Yeah, that probably would work. Not that we're trying to figure out how to get into the category of the rebellious son, by the way, but just the Talmud. But there are more details, by the way. The son has to be a certain age. My understanding is, again, you probably have the notes there. It has to be a certain type of, very specific type of meat prepared in a very specific way. Oh, it has to be raw meat. It has to be, I believe so. It has to be raw meat or not cooked over a certain amount. Mark, if you see any other notes in your text, let me know. It's all in the Talmud. It's all in Sanhedrin. But it's very, very difficult for this to ever happen. And the Talmud says it never happened. Let's continue in this Rashi while Mark looks that up. The wayward and rebellious son is executed. Why is he executed? Listen to this. On account of what he will become in the end. The Torah penetrates to his ultimate intentions. In other words, the Torah foresees what will ultimately happen. Eventually, he will squander his father's money, seek what he has become accustomed to, not find it, stand at the crossroads and rob people, killing them, thereby incurring the death penalty. Says the Torah, let him die innocent of such crimes rather than have him die guilty of such crimes. Now that sounds a little like scary. We're punishing people based on their future crimes, based on, right? Like, how do you even know? Wasn't there a movie about that where you could like read people's minds, Minority Report or something? Yeah, Tom Cruise. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Speaking of which, by the way, I saw a Scientology truck. I was driving behind a church of Scientology in Atlanta. They had like a truck. Now my kids don't know necessarily. I don't think they know what Scientology is. But my son, one of my sons who was in the car, it was like a yellow van, and it looked like a prisoner transport van. You know, the ones that have like the steel mesh thing behind the front row, and then it was just open behind it. So because you're like, why is that church having a prisoner transport van? And I'm like, I don't actually know, but Scientology, who knows? Who knows? All sorts of crazy things. Anyway, my point here is not to diss Scientology. Nonetheless, I mentioned Tom Cruise, so can't not.
They were gonna say it's time to bring mitzvah tax to Atlanta.
You know what? That's actually not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. I think for Sukkot, we're gonna have a pedal sukkah, one of those bike sukkahs
Oh, yeah?
for the Beltline.
You sit on the bicycle.
So no, somebody drives it, but you could sit in the back and do. Oh my! I saw the craziest thing in Midtown.
I mean, Chicago too.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I saw the craziest thing in Midtown in Atlanta on West Peachtree. Listen to this. It was an open truck that was a bar where everyone sits at the bar and pedals.
I did one of those.
But what is that? My mind was blown.
Yeah, they have those in Nashville. Yeah.
But what it like?
They're always thinking of something.
No, but what's the concept? Why do you have to pedal? It's not making the car move.
You know,
You're
you know,
exercising?
They have those bikes to where as a group, as a tourist, you can go on this bike.
Yeah, but the bike is not making it go. The guy is driving it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's bike powered? Maybe it's bike powered. I saw the guy driving it without anybody on it, so I know I can't only be bike powered because the guy was literally driving it empty. And then, I know what it was. I drove to Georgia Tech to drop off my kid over there to learn some bar mitzvah lessons. And then, so I saw it was empty. Then when I came back to do another circle, it was full. What's going on here?
As a group, is supposed to pay the whole and train.
Right. I guess. It's a cool concept. What's my point? I have literally no idea.
Duck boat,
Dock boats, the amphibian vehicles. So how do we get into that? Drinking and eating, no. Peddling. Scientology. Tom Cruise, Scientology, hold on. Minority Report. Okay, predicting crime. So the Torah says that why do we execute? It's pretty harsh. Again, never happened. But why theoretically would we execute this rebellious son? Because they're exhibiting indicators of behavior that will ultimately end with them becoming a robber, a highway bandit, and a murderer. And therefore we say, all right, let's just take them out right now. That's what the Torah says. That's what the commentaries explain. Okay. And how do we know that they're going to end up killing? Because look, this child is stealing from the parents, is gluttoning on food, is guzzling on the wine. When the money runs out, when the parents don't provide the money, where's he going to get the money from? He's going to rob people. And when they don't want to give him the money, he's going to kill them. So that's it. All right. Again, it is what it is. It never happened. It never will happen. But it's a very interesting law nonetheless. There must be a positive message that we can take from this, right? Like, what's the positive message? Did we finish the verse? I think we finished the verses, right? Clear out the evil. Okay. I think the positive message here, one of the positive messages here is when the Torah sets it up. It says, verse 18, if you look back at verse 18, if a man has a wayward or rebellious son who does not obey his father or his mother. But in the Hebrew, and this is very important, you can all see the Hebrew, right? It's 1, 2, 3, 4 verses from the end, Yud 18. So it says, he doesn't listen, he is not listening, B'kol aviv uv'kol imo, to the voice of his father and to the voice of his mother. By the way, the Talmud says, why does it say the word B'kol twice? The voice of his father and the voice of his mother. It tells us that the father and mother's voice, in order for this to happen, for this to be an actual case of the rebellious son, the father's voice and the mother's voice has to sound the same. So typically it's understood that they have to have it, which is again why this will never happen. Because since what are the odds that the father's voice and the mother's voice would sound identical? Like that's any two people typically don't sound identical.
Mhm.
Right.
Even like literally.
Oh.
They have to be on the same.
Oh, good. Look, Sandrine's already.
Yeah.
Sandrine is darshaning. That's exactly where I was going to go. So the Talmud, right? The Talmud. But listen to this. It puts responsibility on the parents. That's the ultimate thing where we're going. You'll see what I mean in a second. The Talmud means literally that the voices have to be the same, which means it's never going to happen. But the mystical understanding of this is B'kol v'B'kol imo means that their voices have to be on the same page, which means that if they're not on the same page and this child is rebellious, then you don't blame the child, you blame the parents. Because in order for a child to have whatever, to give the child the best shot, parents have to be on the same page. That's the ultimate point. So to blame the child, you look at the parents first. Were they on the same page? Then we can have a continue the conversation. If they weren't, then don't look at the kid. You look at the parents. You guys got to get on the same page. And that is, it's obviously it's an ongoing process because, well, no one's close to perfect. No human being is close to perfect, especially when it comes to relationships, especially when it comes to parenting, and especially when it comes to two different people trying to parent, and their own personalities are also coming in. Anyway, so all of that is the first reading. Now wow, what a great way to start the second reading. Let's start the second reading. For those of you with me here, live and local, this will be the second page that I gave you, which has reading number 2, chapter 21, verse 21. All right. If a man commits a sin for which he is sentenced to death and he is put to death, you shall then hang him on a pole. Huh? Okay. Why? So that others will know and not do the same thing. However, the Torah is quick to continue with verse 23. I think I said it's verse 21. I made a mistake. It's chapter 21, verse 22, and now verse 23. But you shall not leave his body on the pole overnight. Rather, you shall bury him on that same day. And this becomes, by the way, the source for burial on the same day. From a case of execution, how you treat the body, we learn for everyone about the need for to expedite the funeral and the burial. But you shall bury him on that same day. Why? For a hanging human corpse is a blasphemy of God. And you shall not defile your land, which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. Let's pull up some Rashis. Rashi says the following. The juxtaposition of these passages, i.e. this one and that of the wayward and rebellious son, teaches us that if his father and mother spare him, let's say the parents don't bring the rebellious son to court, he will eventually lead an evil lifestyle and commit grave sins for which he will be sentenced to death by the court. In other words, it's going to end there. Oh, and by the way, the continuation from the beginning of the Torah portion is you'll go to war, take captives, you'll lust after one of the captives because you'll find her physically attractive. You'll not be happy with her. Either you'll divorce her or you'll stay married to her. There's going to be another wife with another kid that you prefer, but this one you won't. He's going to know it. He's going to be the rebellious son, right? Then either it'll end up the way it ended up over there with a capital punishment, or it won't, but he'll end up leading a life of crime and ultimately be sentenced to death by the court. What's the moral of the story? Love someone for the right reasons. That's the moral of the story. Okay. Next, you shall then hang him on a pole. So here we have Rashi. A rabbi said, all who are stoned by the court must afterwards be hanged. For the verse says, a hanging human corpse is a blasphemy of God. Thus we find that the sin of blasphemy is connected with hanging, and a blasphemer is punished by stoning. Consequently, a rabbi's taught that although stoned must be hanged. So if someone is punished, capital punishment by stoning, then you hang the body. Why? As a reminder of a person that others should not do what that person did, but it's only for a very short amount of time. And then it's taken down. Why? Because a hanging human corpse, Rashi says, is a blasphemy of God. So this is a degradation. I'm reading Rashi here. This is a degradation of the divine king in whose image man is created, and the Israelites are God's children. This is comparable to two identical twin brothers. One of them became a king while the other was arrested for robbery and hanged. Whoever saw him, the second brother, suspended on the gallows would say, the king is hanging. Therefore, the king ordered, and they removed him from the gallows. Wherever the term, okay, we're going to skip that. So basically, since we're created in the image of God, it's not nice that a human body should be hanging on a pole. So why put up there in the first place? The idea of a deterrent. But it can't be up there for long. They have to be buried on the same day. And that we call kavod hames, which means honoring and respecting the deceased and the body of the deceased. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Deuteronomy chapter 22. Let's see how long. Oh, yeah, perfect timing. We have a few verses. Let's do this and we'll officially close out. You shall not see your brother's ox or sheep straying and ignore them. If you see the animal of your friend, oh, hey, that's my neighbor Bob's ox, just roaming the street, roaming the beltline. Oh, hold on. Don't ignore it. Rather, you shall return them to your brother. Yeah. Corral the animal and bring it back, lead him back to the neighbor. But if your brother is not near you, or if you did not know him, right? Let's say you don't know who you see, you just see a random ox walking down the beltline. I'm looking at the beltline now, right? So what do? You shall bring it into your house, and it shall be with you until your brother seeks it out, whereupon you shall return it to him. Basically, you take it home and you take care of it until such time as you can reunite it with the owner. So they look for you, for the finder, you look for them, for the one who lost it, and hopefully you find each other. So shall you do not only with the ox or the sheep, so shall you do with his donkey, so shall you do with his garment, so shall you do with any lost article of your brother, which he has lost and you have found, you shall not ignore it. There's a human tendency to say, I don't want to get involved in any good Samaritan acts, right? Somebody lost something, I find it on the road, I find a wallet, find a cell phone. Do I need the hassle? Like, I need this in my life now to track down the owner, start posting and start announcing things. Let someone else do it. The Torah says, no, we should take responsibility for each other's stuff and not keep it, but get it back to them. And this way we live in a world in which we're looking out for each other and being honest and respecting property. Let's continue verse number 4. You shall not see your brother's donkey or his ox fallen under his load on the road and ignore them. So here's another scenario where you help out your brother, your neighbor, and not literally brother, your neighbor and the neighbor's animal. Let's say you see an ox or a donkey and it's literally struggling because it's overloaded with stuff. So don't ignore the animal. Rather, you shall pick up the load with him. You should help the owner unload the load from the animal. There's an animal that's suffering. This is one of the sources of making sure that we're not being cruel to animals. So number one, don't overload your animal. If you loaded the animal, unload it ASAP. And if you see someone that's unloading their animal, go help them to alleviate ever quicker the burden on that animal. Let's continue. Verse number 5. Oh, we got everything. Look at this. A man's attire shall not be on a woman, nor may a man wear a woman's garment, because whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord your God. So this would be the prohibition against wearing clothes of the other gender, which I know we live in 2021, but we're studying Torah, and this is what Yentl, Barbara Streisand, she dresses up.
As a man.
Yeah. Okay, so someone said it's a movie. So like, by the way, there's a question, by the way. Hold on. I used it, by the way, twice in that sentence. There is a question, halacha question. Like on Purim, on the holiday of Purim, when everyone dresses up, is it permitted for a woman to dress up like a man or for a man to dress up like a woman? In the context of Purim, celebration, masks, costumes, but does it have to remain in gender? I believe the consensus is, yeah, it does. But once it reaches a certain age, like if a little kid wants to dress up, it's one thing. But a little bit older already, this law would likely apply, even though it's under the category of just, fun and whatever, not serious. But next, let's continue. Verse number 6. If a bird's nest, we're almost done. If a bird's nest chances before you on the road, or on any tree or on the ground, and it contains fledglings or eggs, if the mother is sitting upon the fledglings or upon the eggs, you shall not take the mother upon the young. So don't take the eggs with the mother still there. You shall send away the mother, and then you may take the young for yourself in order that it should be good for you. You shall lengthen your days. If you want the eggs, so you can take the eggs, but not with the mother still there. That's cruel. That's not nice. Don't do that. So here we're learning the idea of compassion. Compassion to animals. If you see the animal straying, return it to its owner. If you see the animal struggling under a burden, get the burden off quickly. And if you see a mother bird and the babies or the eggs, send away the mother first and then take the eggs. All right. And in the middle, we had the idea of not wearing the clothing of the other gender. So I'm sure that there are commentaries that explain how it fits into this, what seems to be a consistent theme here of compassion to animals, compassion to God's creatures. How is this to be continued? Like if I had my Mikrot Gedola with like a dozen commentaries on the page, I'm sure I would have something. Maybe what I can do though is I have another option. I can pull up. Oh, interesting. Rashi quotes the Talmud. What's the problem with a woman dressing like a man, making her appear like a man, thereby enabling her to go among men? For this can only be for the purpose of adultery. Interesting. Nor may a man wear a woman's garment to go and abide among women. Hair removal gets mentioned here. All right. Anyway, we're not gonna get into all the details here. Abomination. Okay, so Rashi explains based on the Talmud that what's the abomination? Because the wearing of these clothes, the prediction here is that it's going to lead to immoral and illicit behavior. Okay, how does that still fit into this conversation? Okay, so we still need some more commentaries on it. What we might be able to do is pull up Sefaria and look up Tanakh. They're asking me to become a monthly donor, so not this second. Torah portion is Teitzei. And we are in verse number 5. So we click on it, and we have commentaries, and we have Rashi, Ibn Ezra. Let's see, Ibn Ezra. Oh wait, why is this in English? It's going to be, hold on. Let's do Hebrew commentaries, Mefarshim, Ibn Ezra. So I would say it's the Muhammad. Okay. Let's go back to the commentaries. Ibn Ezra, Ramban, Sephardi, Barbanel. Let's see what Barbanel has to say.
All right.
One second. All right, yeah, Mark, jump in.
Yeah. I've got a note on wearing the clothes of the opposite sex. This note is from Sifrei 226 Nazir 59a.
Yeah.
What is that?
That's Sifri is a medrash and Nazir is the Talmud.
It says the conclusion here. It says it's always an abomination, but the prohibition against wearing garments of the opposite sex applies only to a garment which could lead to an abomination.
There you go. Right.
So it's not just wearing the clothes of the opposite sex,
right,
but clothes which
that's
are
fair enough. Yeah.
Sexually entice someone.
Right. As Rashi indicated as well, that it's leading to the illicit behavior. That means that the garments would be limited to that construct. That makes sense. Or to that end. Interesting. So then maybe the Purim example would be okay. Because it's not. But I still think the custom is to try to avoid that. My understanding is. Okay. To be continued, to look at that. All right. Why is it, huh? Dressing up. Right. So you're saying it does happen. Men putting on wigs and dressing or whatever.
Yeah, the British have done that for a long time, like with
well, obviously the British
Shakespeare plays and all that. They play the parts of women. Men play the parts of women.
They're the British. What do you expect? I'm just joking. Just joking. No beef with the British. Nor do I want any beef with the British. Okay, fine, good. To me, this requires more research. Like, what are the particulars in the modern application of this idea, let's say vis-a-vis Purim and dressing up in a costume, or, I was gonna say Halloween, but like, let's stick with the Jewish version of it, right? Purim, what would that practically look like as far as what is okay, what's not okay? Would like putting on just a wig, but not clothing, is that, to have long hair, would that be okay? Wearing a crown, like a Queen Esther thing, like an accessory. What about wearing jewelry? That's typically associated with I wasn't even going dressed. I was saving that for but like jewelry, would that be considered a thing? Or is it not, as Mark said, it's not necessarily the enticing type of, all right, we would have to look into that and see what is being written about that in modern times. As far as your question, Sandrine, about the juxtaposition between the returning the animal and not overburdening the animal, and not taking the baby eggs, the chicks, the eggs with the mother still there, as far as why that's here, why the cross-dressing thing is here, that we have to look further. I just quickly looked in Sephora. I didn't see any commentaries that speak to the juxtaposition. Doesn't mean they're not there, it just means I didn't find it. I don't know. It might be. It's usually repeating something. Right. I don't know. So Sandrine is asking the question, is this the only time that the prohibition against cross-dressing appears, or is it elsewhere? I'm not sure. Anyway, interesting topic. And if I do plan on looking this up, both elements of it, the modern application as well as the juxtaposition. If I find something, I will let you know. If I find something of interest, I'll let you know tomorrow. All right. Thank you for joining both in person, enjoying a great lunch from Spicy Beach.
I was looking for definition for draft or drought.
Yeah.
So with Merriam-Webster dictionary, drought is another version of the English word draft, which is the act or instance of drinking or inhaling. Also, the portion drunk or inhaled in one such act. So
it's
the
one
definition is the
guzzle.
One.
Okay, we have a definition. Thank you, Matt. We have a definition of the draft, which is just one motion of knocking it down. Obviously, the liquid would have to take time to flow, but it would be one gulp, so to speak. One.
Fill the container up and drink in one drink.
Right,
Yeah.
just like that. Remember that Coke commercial with Mean Joe Green of the Steelers, the 1970s?
Yeah.
Right, where he drinks the Coke. The kid gives him a Coke. He drinks the whole 2-liter bottle or something, and then throws the kid his jersey. Anyway, whatevs. All right, perfect, good. So now we know what not to do. Right, don't steal money from parents to just indulge in. There's a specific type of meat, by the way. It's very specific meat and specific wine. A lot of quantity in one gulp or bite, and crime doesn't pay, kids. Just remember, yeah.
Ari.
Hold on 1 second, Donna. Yeah.
This is not to address fully today, but I just was thinking with this session, Israel as a new country, when they created their justice system, if they looked to the Torah for something.
Donna's asking if when Israel created their justice system with the founding of the state in 1948, if they turned to Torah in the creation of their legal system. They turned to some Torah values, but they didn't base it on Torah law. They based it on Western law, which is based on Torah, but they went based on the latest iterations, not back to the source. There are central Jewish rabbinical courts in Israel that do explore and work on Jewish law, but the Israeli secular courts are not based on Torah law. There are some inspirations, but you couldn't say that it's built on it's on Torah law. It's not. Mark, you'll get the last word.
Yeah, about cross-dressing, whatever.
Yeah,
I've got a couple of good notes here. These are both from Sifrei 226 Nazir, whatever. It says the question of whether it is forbidden to wear garments of the opposite sex without intent to commit immoral behavior is a matter of dispute.
There you go.
And then it goes on to a second note. It says the text follows all the early printed editions except the Zamora edition, which omits the word, I can't read this, lashav, it's real small, lashav or lashav, to sit.
Right.
Rashi's sources read, a man shall not adorn himself with women's ornaments and go among the women. A man
Right.
shall not woman's garments and sit among the women. So that's to deceive people
Right.
who
As-
believe. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so that would limit it. I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So with that, we'll close it out. Thank you for joining me for DPP and Peachy Parsha. It's great to study with you guys. All right. Announcement as far as what's coming up tonight. I'm pretty sure we don't have anything. Tomorrow night we have also nothing. Right. Wednesday night we're back, and then Thursday not yet, and then next week we have Sunday night movie. Tuesday night, the course that's starting 60 days.
Monday, oh yeah.
And what's Monday? And then the next Monday, we have the Shofar Factory. All right. So stuff is starting to heat up. Then we're going to have soon Holiday Boot Camp and all that stuff. So stay tuned for more fun and excitement. All right. We'll see you guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Take
Thank you,
care.
Rabbi.
Bye, Sarah. Bye, Mark. Bye, Ray. Bye, guys.